Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is CraigCrash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. We're right in the thick of it in the month of May, Indy 500 festivities. We just had the GMR Grand Prix this past week. That was a lot of fun watching Colton Herta grab the victory there. And now that means we turn our sights towards the 106th running of the Indianapolis 500, and today we talk about qualifying, as this weekend is set to be a fun one. So whether or not you're watching on YouTube, you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, welcome in, as we are just now a couple of weeks until the Indy 500 and qualifying right around the corner. We had practices today as of the live recording here on twitch.tv. So, you know, we're finally in the thick of things, B. Scott.
Takuma Sato topped the poll today.
And he was one of the quicker ones in the oval test, too. Or the open test a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, Takuma Sato, two-time Indy 500 champ, is off to a good a good run, and it kind of, we're going to give our predictions at the end of the show, who we think is going to be on the front row. Maybe one of us jostles it up a little bit, but that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk about the GMR Grand Prix. We're going to talk about our takeaways from that, as well as we're going to preview qualifying. We're going to talk a little bit about the weekend ahead. But first of all, B. Scott, instead of just looking at the weekend ahead, how was your past weekend? How did you enjoy watching the GMR Grand Prix?
I didn't really get to watch too much of it, but I watched the first few laps. And boy, it was fun. Just the few laps that I did see, I watched up until the rain was getting ready to come back in again. But man, that was some really tough racing. The conditions were just nasty. It took a lot of tough strategy, and it was really the first time that they have ever had a rain race with the new aero screen. So that was another challenge for the drivers. I know Connor Daly was saying that at one point he couldn't see anything, and his spotter was the real champ of the day. His spotter was essentially his eyes and got him around the track. And for him to finish off on the top five was awesome for him, he said. So
yeah, I mean, it
was a great race.
He was one of the drivers that you mentioned needed to have a turnaround month, and he's definitely got it off to a good
start. Honestly, I did not see the turnaround starting in the Grand Prix. I know he's had some good. He had a good qualifying spot last year, and he got bumped out in a wreck in turn one. But I honestly thought we would see him really step up this coming weekend for qualifying. So now he's got some momentum going into the oval, where he does have the speed, where he does have the experience and the confidence. So I think big things are on the horizon for Connor Daly and Ed Carpenter Racing.
Well, one thing that we just put in our rearview mirror, as we mentioned, is the GMR Grand Prix. That's where it all got started for Connor and a bunch of other Indy 500 hopefuls. Let's go ahead and take a peek back at the 2022 GMR Grand Prix. First of all, Will Power sits P1. It's his fourth pole on the Indy Road Course, his 64th career pole, which is 3 short of Mario Andretti's all-time record. So that's pretty crazy. It was
I'm surprised Scott Dixon.
Yeah,
wouldn't be the 3 off.
And I mean, I'm sure he's up there. I'm sure
he is. He is up there.
Yeah,
but it's not as many as Will Power. That was one stat that really surprised me.
Yeah, it was wet track. Drivers started on rain tires. It was a crazy opening lap. I mean, things got going right away. It results in Pato O'Ward leading lap 1. It was originally Alex Palou getting the jump on Will Power, and then in the on the back end of the track, closer to turn 13, that's where we saw Pato O'Ward make the pass. He got out in front.
Both Aero McLaren cars were up there at 1-2 at one point.
Yeah,
on lap 1.
And you thought too that maybe, hey, we just saw him win at Barber. Maybe he's got another good race coming. Will Power went from first to fourth on that lap as well, so that was pretty insane. So a lot of action early, very surprising. Pretty much everybody got through turn one, relatively unscathed, which is usually the big action turn, especially on the opening lap. Colton Herta, he had the absolute save of the year on lap 3, I think it was. He had already come in for slick tires because of I thought they said in the pre-race show that they had to wait until lap 9, but he came in at lap 3. Maybe I was just saying that was maybe they were saying that's when it was best advised or something like that. But he
Yeah, he
comes
just
in.
took a gamble.
Yeah, he takes a gamble, gets the slick tires on lap 3, and basically goes Tokyo drifting
Oh,
around a
he was.
turn.
This is Indy, boys. This is Indy. He was dirt track racing.
Yeah, and I mean, like you mentioned off air before we got going, he listened to the old Hudson Hornet. Sometimes you got to turn left to go right, and that's exactly what he did. So that was pretty insane. Now looking at some of the cautions, because it was a caution-filled race to say the least. As teams changed from rain tires to slick tires, Alex Palou bobbles, spins, and stalls to bring out the first yellow at lap 5. On lap 17, Joseph Newgarden spins after contact with Alexander Rossi and Jack Harvey. He hit Rossi after sliding, and then he's later spun by Harvey, not intentionally, just kind of went off the front wing there. On the restart on lap 21, Rinus VeeKay gets into the grass, spins, and collects Delvin G. Francesco. Nowhere really for the rookie to go. He runs right into VeeKay there. Then Dalton Kellett spins on lap 37. A local yellow turns into a full course yellow, and that is when the weather starts to loom. There's a restart on lap 42 as rain begins to fall. Pato O'Ward spins, collecting teammate Felix Rosenquist. Sato spins as well. Rossi pits for rain tires first, so we thought, hey, maybe that's the pit strategy that ends up winning him the race. Alexander Rossi gets rain tires when it looks like everyone at some point is going to have to come back in and get rain tires, as it looked like it was going to get ready and let loose. As far as rain's concerned, Jimmy Johnson spins on lap 57 to bring out another yellow. And then at that point, it becomes a timed race after the caution for Jimmy Johnson. So I think at the time it was like with they put 18 minutes on the clock. Green comes out with 14:23 to go. Then the caution comes out pretty much immediately as Scott McLaughlin spins while on slick tires. Green comes out for the final time on with 6:11 left on the clock. Juan Pablo Montoya, he has a collision, which brings out a caution with under 2 minutes to go to essentially win the race for Colton Herta. It ends the race. Colton Herta grabs the victory. Race summary: Colton Herta leads 50 of 75 laps. Simon Pagenaud, Will Power, Scott Dixon, and B. Scott's dark horse and my pick to win rounds out the podium. Marcus Ericsson was 4th. Colton Herta. Wait, I got that wrong. Who ended up being 5th? I wrote down
Connor Daly.
Connor Daly. There we go. I must have just Colton Herta on the brain. But Connor Daly with the much needed 5th place finish. There was 10 lead changes among 6 drivers, 8 cautions for 31 laps, so pretty much half the race there. Point standings coming out of the GMR Grand Prix heading into Indy. Will Power has the points lead. He's got 170. Alex Palou is 14 behind him. Scott McLaughlin is 3rd, 18 points off the pace. Joseph Newgarden is back 30 points. He's in 4th, and Scott Dixon currently 5th at minus 37. So looking at our reaction from this race, I mean, it was, insanity. As a guy who, gets really intrigued by the strategy of sports, that the weather added another element, that you just didn't expect, because it's not like it went from, okay, it's, raining for the first half of the race. Now it's cleared out. And so that's part of the strategy when you switch, because of the wetness or dryness of the track. It was like, weather's not only, been here, it's potentially coming back, and we don't know when it's going to hit, and when do you make the gamble to go back? And you've got Colton Herta, who's like, you know what, once we go to slicks, we're just going to stay on slicks. We're not even worried about it. And, it was just insane. I mean, I know, it basically made this race, pit strategy on steroids, which I actually kind of like. Now in 2019, the Indy Grand Prix was also a wet race, but I don't remember the weather being so uncertain and playing this much of a factor. I'm pretty sure it was one of those like it started out wet and then just got drier as the race went on, or
No, it
maybe
was
reversed.
opposite.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was dry and kind of cold and windy. And then the rain moved in, and that's when Simon Pagenaud hit the turbo boost button and just dominated the field.
Right. The weather was so uncertain that half of the completed laps were under caution, so that's pretty much the main drawback is that there was a lot of yellow and caution laps because it seemed like even race control was like, we don't really know what to expect here. So that just kind of added another element. There was so much intrigue in when to switch between rain and regular tires that created an extra element. Which kind of made up for the caution laps because even under caution, the discussion was when do we switch to which tire? What do we do? And I'm really intrigued by the storylines heading into the Indy 500. I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week. Will Power now is the points leader, but the rest of Penske is struggling. McLaughlin and Newgarden have their worst finishes of the year so far. McLaughlin's best finish since being on the podium the first 2 weeks is sixth at Barber. Newgarden's 2 wins are the only top 10 finishes he has. He's been like 14th, 20th, and 25th. So some really rough stretches there for the rest of the Penske crew. Scott Dixon's streak without a win continues. He's now at 18 races, and Honda finally on the board with a win. So some of the storylines of the year that we talked about going into May last week are now starting to kind of unfold and pick which direction they're going to be in heading into the Indy 500. So it was a really intriguing race. I think it was a good one. Yeah, it was just that weather, just made it that much more crazy.
Look, the weather is the reason Penske struggled. It's the reason a lot of people struggled. And I don't think it's any coincidence whatsoever that the driver that won is the driver that's most likely heading to Formula One here within the very near future. I mean, this was a Formula One race. If you have watched Drive to Survive at all, you know they race in the rain a lot. So this was the run that just screamed Colton Herta is a future Formula One driver. I wouldn't say, oh my gosh, Penske's really struggling now heading into the rest of the month of May. I wouldn't say that at all because.
Well, I'm not just saying that because of the run at the GMR Grand Prix. I'm saying that because, I mean, outside of Will Power, who has consistently been in the top 5, he's finished the top 5 every week. I mean, you have McLaughlin. I mean, Penske had a really great start, and they're still having, pretty good, solid races and weekends. But, I mean, Scott McLaughlin, I think, has been outside the top 10, and of the 5 races, obviously won the first one, finished second at the second race, then had like 2 races where he finished outside the top 10, and then, which I mean is going to happen. I'm not saying like, oh, it's the end of the season for Penske. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm just saying is that they opened so strongly, and this is a product of that. I mean, when you open so strongly and then you have a 3 or 4 week period where you're just not on your game, I mean, that's people are going to notice, and so that's what I'm ultimately saying. I'm not saying like, oh, watch out, the demise of Penske. It's just the fact that Newgarden's really his only 2 good weeks were the races that he won, and then the rest have been like not good up to Newgarden standard. And that's also part of the problem is that you have such excellent drivers that when they struggle, you're like, oh man, that's really big news. So I think they'll. I mean, I don't think they're in trouble by any means as far as the championship is concerned or anything like that. But it definitely goes from a season where, hey, more often than not, Penske's been up front and been dominating to, well, now the last few weeks their momentum's not really there anymore.
Right. I think one of the big takeaways for me is that Meyer Shank was right up there at the end with Simon Pagenaud. Not surprised whatsoever. I really now look for, I mean, Elio had a rough day, but again, if you were not Colton Herta or anybody in the top 5, you had a rough day. Everybody had a rough day outside of the top 5. So, but I think Meyer Shank is a team to really keep an eye on for the rest of this month. Do I think they're going to have like the cars to watch this coming weekend for qualifying? I don't think so, but come race day, watch out for those guys. That's a big storyline. They finally had a good weekend for at least one of their drivers.
I also, speaking of Simon Pagino, it just made me think of, like, so I'm in a fantasy IndyCar league with a friend of the show, Spencer Frady, and I was pretty happy. Two of the picks on my team were Will Power and Simon Pagino, because I was like, well, they both have been amazing at this race, and it ended up getting me the win this week. So yeah, so it's gonna be fun to watch them, qualify and race, over the next couple of weeks, kind of getting to where we thought they might be at the beginning of the year. So
Yeah.
one word to describe Colton Herta's performance. That's the next, phrase or the next question on the board. And for me, it's GOAT, greatest of all time. I
Ooh.
know. Listen, this is
I
exactly what I'm getting
know,
ready to
I
get into.
know.
I know we get caught up in, was X the greatest ever? See, I knew that's why had it built in. I know that's what we always get caught up in doing, after these types of things. But I think Colton Herta's run at the Indy GP was just that in terms of races on the Indy road course.
Okay.
First off, winning from 14th starting spot is the furthest back any IndyCar driver has won on the IMS road course. A giant chunk of the races have been won from the front row. That's basically been either Simon Pagino or Will Power winning the pole and then ultimately winning the race. Not many times do you make a decision to pit on lap 3 and it wins you the race. I mean, that was pit strategy that came so early in the race that you just, like, it kind of was an afterthought. Because I mean, I don't think, did he switch back to rain tires at any point
I'm
after?
not
I
sure.
don't think he did, and so that's just the decision to do that and just kind of live
I mean,
with
if you
it.
think about it, the green flag stints once the rain came back
Weren't very
were
long.
very short.
Yeah.
So he just ran under caution.
Right, and I mean it paid off, which is pretty crazy. I mean, you also couple that with the save of the year sliding through, a turn which is in this, a similar part of the track to where Alex Palou, the defending series champ, spins a few laps later. I mean, that's just kind of
Yeah.
goes into perspective to show you, like, hey, Alex Palou, who's as clean and as disciplined of a driver as there is, had trouble in not the same area, but a similar, the back end of the track, in, that Herta also slid on. I mean, Herta was able to save it. Palou was not. A lot of other drivers were not able to save it. I mean, it was as chaotic of a day as they come, and Herta ended up, being the best of them all. So I think, you know, all the same, and plus, I mean, it wasn't just that save either. I mean, you saw him slide a ton on the all onboard camera. He did a hell of a job not wrecking the thing, and he winds up winning. So I think you have one of the most chaotic races of recent memory, and you go win it. I mean, that's one of the greatest performances of all time. So yes, I'm not saying the greatest ever in the history of motorsports ever, but in terms of the Indy Grand Prix, I think this is the greatest run we've seen so far.
See, I wouldn't necessarily say it was the greatest run we've ever seen at the Indy car at the GMR Grand Prix. It was good because the strategy calls were good and that one save. I would still say the best run we've seen was 2019 Simon Pagino coming from behind and running down a Scott Dixon who had checked out essentially, and then battling him down to the very end and then winning. I would consider that the greatest Grand Prix. But for me, this performance from Colton Herta, like I said earlier, this is a Formula One win, essentially. Race conditions, Formula One esque race conditions on a track that was designed for Formula One.
Yeah.
So for me, this sets up this performance really bodes well for Colton Herta's future. And it's funny how it comes off of the heels of the Miami Grand Prix for F1, where all the IndyCar drivers were, a lot of them were down there, and Colton Herta was down there making a lot of headlines. So, yeah, I'll label this performance Formula One esque for Colton Herta.
Yeah, memorable too, because I think this was one of those races where you're going to, like, in 5 years be like, remember that time where, like, Colton Herta almost spun out and he ended up winning the race? He decided he was going to pit for rain tire or for slicks at lap 3, and it ended up paying off. Because I mean, I know, you bring up Formula One, and my family used to go to the U.S. Grand Prix when it was at Indy. And I remember there was one year where Michael Schumacher was so far out ahead that he spun and then like just continued on like nothing happened and won the race because he was like 25 seconds ahead of second place. And that's like one of that, and of course the infamous 2006 one. Like those are the two ones that stick out in my mind. So like
can we get a Crash Course Nation petition going to get Formula One to come back to Indy?
Yeah,
I know the old fogies all be like, no, they lost their opportunity. They won't get my business back. Sit down, boomer. It's gonna be fine. I just feel like with the popularity of the Netflix series Drive to Survive and how that has made Formula One popular in the US again, popular enough that there's 2 races in the US now.
That's what I was gonna ask, if there was multiple country
Well,
or multiple races in one country.
There are. For a lot of countries, they'll go back to the same track a couple of times. But in the US, they come to Miami now, and then they do the US Grand Prix at the Circuits of America down in Austin. That's still on the schedule.
It would be interesting how they would navigate it, because for one, I think you would need to have it at a different time of the year, because they usually had it in September when it was like cold and rainy. But I think.
But that's Formula One racing, though.
True. I think it would be like one of those things where I don't see it even being like something that you would even consider until like maybe 2026. At that point, you're 20 years past the fiasco. Everything's kind of in the books. All the the people that remember that race are probably not actually coming to it anymore. Like because I mean, as it was one of those things where it was a messy breakup between Indy and F1, but it was also a mutual breakup. It's not that, I mean, Indy had, was upset with F1, F1 was upset with Indy. So it's not like Indy, it's not like Indy dropped the ball or
fixed.
Yeah. So,
and we have somebody in charge of the Speedway now,
and
that is forward thinking and really wants it to come back.
That, and also, I mean, if you start seeing guys from IndyCar go over,
well, we've seen guys from Formula One come over here to race in the Indy 500.
If that continues, if that kind of relationship continues, I think then we'll see probably more and more likely that they could.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could. There's potential for, at least Colton Herta.
Yeah.
To jump ship.
Sure. Then you mentioned
it all depends.
Rossi
which McLaren team is Rossi looking at?
Right.
Formula One, or is it the IndyCar?
Didn't you say Rossi could potentially jump ship too? Yeah, and I mean, heck.
Well, that's what I was just saying. I was like, which McLaren team was he, or is he rumored to? Is it the Formula One McLaren, or is it the IndyCar McLaren?
I mean, Andretti Autosport could look completely different in a couple of years.
I mean, that the flagship of that team could be a former Formula One driver, Roman Grosjean. I mean,
yeah, so it's definitely there. So
he's one I was surprised did not have a better weekend.
Yeah.
The conditions were favorable for somebody like him to really step forward. And same thing with, I guess Marcus Ericsson did have a good weekend because he's a former F1 driver as well.
I'm with you, because I definitely expected, with a little bit better equipment than where he was last year, I expected him to potentially contend. But yeah, he really wasn't. He was really kind of an afterthought. He wasn't really up there a whole lot. So
yeah, you would have thought his past experience and his kind of, maybe the aero screen,
maybe
that may have been an issue, and he doesn't really know how to handle a spotter, how to utilize a spotter too well yet.
True.
So I don't know, just a thought, something that I just kind of realized. I was like, wait a second, he did not have a good weekend, and this was right in his wheelhouse.
Right.
So
one last thing before we move on to our friends of the show and then Indy 500 qualifying. Colton Herta's Indy 500 winner odds to win are now plus 900. So on a scale from $1 to $10, because we bet responsibly here at 3. What would you place on that bet? For me, it'd be a 350, $35 payout. I'm a little bit of a wuss. I don't like going super high, because I'm not very lucky. We have the crash kiss of death. We all know about that. But it's really hard to sweep Indy. I mean, Will Power did it in 2018. Simon Pagino did it in 2019. But those are the only two to do it.
Yeah, but it was recent.
Right, true.
Enough. And Herta does race for Andretti.
Yeah.
Whereas Andretti, I mean, okay. I guess if you had to say this would be the bet for if Herta could get the pole, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a strong possibility, because it seems like Andretti's cars always run well in practice and qualifying. Come race day, sometimes they're there.
But yeah, I mean, call it recency bias, but I believe after watching a race that was truly one of the most unpredictable, Herta can win the randomness that is the Indy 500, because the Indy 500, it can be as random as they come as well. And also, I just wanted to, defend myself a little bit. 350 is a respectable bet, because it's not so little that you feel cheap, but it's also still a solid payout. Like you get a nice $35. You can go buy a nice dinner with that. I mean, at least in terms
Texas
of
Roadhouse.
Exactly, yeah.
Get yourself a good steak and some cinnamon rolls, or some buns with the cinnamon butter.
Yeah.
Now I got Craig all hungry.
Oh yeah, that's why that's what the silence is. I'm just envisioning
he's like Homer Simpson.
I'm there. I'm there right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could go. What about you, B Scott? What would you put on that bet?
This is a tough one. Because of the odds, at this point, I would look at the odds with the payout. I haven't done the math because I'm not good at math.
Well, it's at plus 900. It was pretty much like so 350 is 35. So a $10 bet would get you 100, and so it's basically on a scale of 0 to 100.
I think I'm going to say I would go about five on it for a $50 payout. Really? Because you do have the Andretti power there and Honda. And I don't know, it kind of looks like right now Honda may have a little bit of a better power, but we're only one day into practice. So yeah, I would say a $5. He is feeling confident right now. And I think outside of winning a championship, this would be one of those things that if Colton Herta were to be able to pull this off, he would be able to look back and say, I've accomplished a lot in my IndyCar career. I didn't win the IndyCar championship, but I won the Indy 500. So now I can comfortably move on to Formula One. So I'm going to say 5, just because the motivation is there and the momentum.
I like it. I like it a lot. So before we get into Indy 500 qualifying preview, let's go ahead and talk about our friends of the show. First of all, from Anchor, the Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Anchor. Looking to start a podcast but don't know where to start? Look no further than Anchor.fm. Anchor allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or mobile device. We'll distribute it to other sites such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. On a budget, not only is Anchor completely free of charge, but will allow you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Anchor, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Also, the Crash Course podcast is brought to you by Eat Lunch and Board Game, heard weekly on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Wherever podcasts can be heard, board games build bridges. Remember also that you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. Go to the YouTube channel. YouTube channel is hot in the streets right now. We are 3 subscribers away from 50. So if you're watching right now on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast app, go over to YouTube, hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell, man.
50th subscriber gets a free ice cream cone from McDonald's.
as long as their ice cream machine is working. That's the caveat. Also, 3C Media on TikTok as well. Remember, we record live every week, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. And then remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course podcast. Also, just a quick shout out to Pacers fans. The Pacers got 6th in the draft lottery today. So, yeah, I know. Kind of a little bit of a disappointment there. I got my hopes up. I saw our pal Nicky Oman of the IndyCar Network was like, the Pacers have been just once the Pacers, please, but no dice.
Even a top 3 pick. I mean, top 3. At least it wasn't 9th.
Yeah.
Who got the top pick? Do you know?
It didn't say. I just got the ESPN notey that the Pacers got 6th. Yeah, right. So I don't know. So while you look that up, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of get into the qualifying here. So we do have a full entry list. Magic, of course they did.
Yeah, of course. And what are they gonna do with it? Waste it.
They're gonna be like, let's see, I don't know enough prospects to name one that's not a first round pick quality player. But I mean, hey. There you go. The Magic are first. Who are the teams in front of the Pacers, do you see?
All right. So the Detroit Pistons.
So it's Magic Pistons.
No. Number 2 was the Thunder.
They do need it a lot. They were really
3
bad.
Houston Rockets.
Okay.
4 Sacramento Kings. And then 5 Detroit Pistons, 6 Pacers, 7 Trailblazers, 8 Lakers, 9 Spurs, 10 Wizards, 11 Knicks, 12 Clippers, which is going to Oklahoma City, 13 Hornets, and 14 Cavs, who should have made the playoffs. And then the Pacers would have had another first-round pick, but no.
No, that's just how it goes for Pacers fans, unfortunately.
No.
So there you go.
Welcome Keegan Murray to the Indiana Pacers. That's about where he's projected to be picked.
I gotcha.
From Iowa. Keegan Murray of Iowa.
I was like, that name sounds familiar, but why? And I was like, oh yeah, Keegan Murray. Well, I mean, that's not bad. I mean, you would like better, but it's not the worst.
He's got bust written all over him, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe. Well, what won't be a bust is the Indy 500 as we switch over to...
never is.
No, exactly. So let's switch gears over to qualifying this weekend. We do have a full entry list. We talked about it a little last week. Stephen Wilson from Dragon Speed Racing is the 33rd entrant. The way it's going to work is qualifying will start on Saturday, quals day 1. Then on Sunday, the top 12 will requalify. Top 6 advance to the Fast 6. Fast 6 will requalify to determine the points, the pole sitter. So looking at the fast drivers from today, there was a veterans practice for practice 1, and then I'm just gonna read off practice 2 because it was all cars. Takuma Sato was the fastest driver today. Scott Dixon was 2nd. Jimmy Johnson was 3rd. Marcus Ericsson 4th. Renus VK 5th. Alex Pillow 6th, David Malukas, looking for rookies to do well. He's 7th, Joseph Newgarden 8th, 9th, Tony Kanaan, 10th, Marco Andretti, 11th, Delvin DiFrancesco, 12th, Simon Pagino, 13th, Dalton Kellett, 14th, J.R. Hildebrand, 15th, Felix Rosenquist, Elio Castroneves was 18th, Scott McLaughlin 22nd, Pato O'Ward 24th, Colton Herta 26th, Alexander Rossi 27th, Connor Daly 28th, Ed Carpenter 29th, and then Romain Grosjean was 31st. So that is how everything kind of shook out after the first day of practice. So getting into the thick of things here, and so. Let's see here. First kind of question we'll get into here. We're going to have a couple of hot or cold questions. We're going to actually get into hot or cold right now, which basically means we're going to say a take and then say whether that take is a hot take or a cold. And so the first one for me, or the first one here, is it bad for IndyCar? There no bumping is bad for IndyCar. So we've got 33 entrants, which means that everybody will make the field for qualifying. And for me, that's going to be hot. I was on Reddit and I found a compilation of bump day moments, and it just made me think of all the drama it can bring. And I know that obviously that's what it's designed to do, and I know that it's not like that every time. Sometimes you have drivers that you see, on the brink of getting bumped, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But I know the drama isn't always there, but it can get so crazy. I mean, 2009, the battle between John Andretti and Ryan Hunter-Ray. 2010, Tony Kanaan barely makes it. I mean, there's been several years where like Indy 500 like favorites and fan favorites have like struggled.
2010, Tony Kanaan almost not making it. Was it 2010?
Yeah, that was the one I just read off. Yeah, Tony Kanaan.
Okay, because there was also one where he wrecked the morning of.
That was that same year.
Okay, because that's when he raced for. He was, yeah,
in the 7-Eleven car
I was
still.
Yeah, because I was an intern at Fox 59. And we were just pulling in that morning, and he had just wrecked. And we were driving by the garages, and they were bringing his car in.
Yeah. 2018, you have Hinchcliffe failing to make the race. 2019, Fernando Alonso bumped. So, I mean, 2017 was the last year with only 33 cars entered. Now that's with the exception of 2020 pandemic years. So I don't really, that's a weird one. You just don't really count it too much. So to be lacking one of the more exciting elements for the first time in 4 races, not ran in a pandemic, I think that's a disappointment. Now, again, it's not to, ring a buzzer, ring, any alarm bells and say that IndyCar's in trouble. But I mean, to have, and again, I mean, there's, I'm sure, reasons. I mean, we are still coming out of a pandemic too, so that could also be why there may not be as many entrants.
Well, also it is more expensive today to put together an IndyCar team than it was just even in recent years.
Right. That's true too.
That is, I know that is one of the bigger factors, but come on, where's Buddy Lazier when we need him?
Exactly.
Get out there and limp that thing around for a few days just so we can bump you right back out.
Exactly. I mean, come on, put him out there in a go-kart. Just see what he can do.
Oh, but the thing is, no, you need more than just Buddy Lazier, because Buddy Lazier is a past champion. Buddy Lazier is in.
Would he be?
At least in the past, there was a time where
it was like a past champion provisional or something like that.
Yeah, where Buddy Lazier basically got in because he was a past champion. He won the 500 in the past.
Interesting. I was gonna say I knew there's that in NASCAR. There used to be that in NASCAR.
But in Indy, I remember for the 500 there was one for a while. I don't know if they do that anymore.
Yeah, so we need like Pippa Mann to.
I thought she was in it.
I don't think so. I didn't see her on the
list. No, she's not, which is funny because they made such a big deal last year because she bumped her way in last year.
Hey, Pippa's always been one of my favorites ever since she ran like the entire race with no like water bottle. So like that's
well, it was such a big deal last year because her entire team was female.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised they didn't bring that back. So, she actually ran pretty well last year too.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. We need to like get one of these guys.
I know.
Get Pippa Mann out there. Something. I mean, we gotta figure this out. So like that's what I'm saying is that like it's not. I will bells by any stretch of the imagination, but it just is a bummer. It's bad. I think.
I don't know. In the past when with the new qualifying format and the way it's broken down into the days and everything, you have the practice for the last 3 or the drivers that are vying for the last 3 spots, and it is just slow. It's not, I don't know, like the last time there was bumping, it just wasn't exciting. I think it was last year. It just wasn't exciting. There wasn't much to get fired up about. And they do it the same day as the run for the pole as well. So it's kind of like, ugh. So I think this not having bumping is going to allow all the drivers to have more practice time, which I think, where'd he go? There he is. It will allow everybody to have more practice time, which will make for more exciting moments on the track, which I think will help in the end. like I think for the casual fan who, is there trying to learn about it and figure it out, the bumping made no sense. It was confusing. Like, wait, what? Not everybody is going to be able to make it into the race. This is confusing. Whereas if you're bringing somebody out to the track for the first time and you're trying to get them excited and everything, you want them to see fast. You want them to see the best. You want to have them be able to see a lot of the cars out there. And this is now going to allow for it without having the bumping. Now, I did like the bumping. I liked it. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to that sense. That was always one of the fun things. But I think if you're looking at like future growth for the sport and a fan base, the ability to see the fast cars out there going for it on pole day and see more time with all the cars out there on the track, I think that will help in the long run, will help grow the fan base more than seeing 4 cars putts around the track for the last 3 positions in the race.
Yeah, I kind of mentally, thinking about this question, I kind of mentally compared it to like the wild card game in baseball. Like, it's not going to be exciting every year, but boy, when it is exciting, it can be.
Because occasionally you do have a big name,
right?
Like Fernando Alonso or James Hinchcliffe or Marco Andretti. I mean, Ryan Hunter-Ray.
Because you just because you just think like in the back of your mind, you're like, you can't have the Indy 500 without Hinch, right? Like, this can't happen. Like, when I remember when Tony Kanaan, like, because I was still, I've always been a big Tony Kanaan fan. He was with the 7-Eleven crew. Like, that 2010 year, I was like, you mean I'm gonna go to the Indy 500? My favorite driver's not gonna be in the race? Like, what is happening?
Well, and it's really concerning for like these guys that are the full-time drivers, like James Hinchcliffe that year. Yeah. Like, wait, what? I don't get, like, I got bumped out by somebody that this is their one-off,
right?
And I'm losing out on the points.
Yeah, and in that,
oh man,
in that respective too, I guess that's where you can make the case where not having it is good too, because you don't risk people that are full-time drivers not making the race. But I'm just saying, when that drama is turned up, to 100, it can be pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So now moving on, take number 2. A rookie will make the top 12 for qualifying. I think that's a hot take. 8 of the last 10 Indy 500s have featured at least one rookie in the first 4 rows. 3 of the 6 rookies who have ran this season have at least one qualifying run in the top 12. So I have faith. I think this class of rookie hasn't been super sensational this year. They're starting to come around. But I think that I think that
today alone, 3 rookies were in the top 12.
Right.
Led by the one that I think could surprise everybody.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a hot take for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely hot take. I mean, even if 3 rookies did not make the top 12 today, which means the rookies had a very good rookie orientation. Let's just put it that way. They passed with flying colors. But when you look at who one of the rookies is and just how dominant he's been at this track,
well,
even though it was another series.
Real quickly though, I see when I wrote this question initially, I wasn't even thinking about like Indy 500 rookies. I was thinking of rookies for the IndyCar series like this year. So like that's what I was going off of, and then I was like, oh yeah, I guess Romain Grosjean and Jimmy Johnson are both rookies of the Indy 500, so that's probably going to mean that.
Well, what's funny, and Romain Grosjean was 31st today, so they were both on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right.
But technically, I think Jimmy Johnson is considered a rookie.
Yeah, he is
for IndyCar.
Yeah, he is for sure.
Okay, because he's a full-time now, fine, for the first time. So yeah, I think this is definitely a hot take. And also because some of these guys that are like full-time rookies outside of like Jimmy Johnson, they were really good Indy Lights drivers. So that typically these guys have that confidence, at least around IMS. So I think out of all the takes on here, this is probably the hottest of them all.
Final take here, Scott Dixon will repeat as Indy 500 pole sitter. I
So
was
hard to just say no.
right, exactly. I mean, because it's happened in recent memory. Edo Castroneves won 3 poles in 4 years, from 2007 to 2010. More recently, Ed Carpenter sat on the pole in back-to-back years in 2013 and 2014. But those are the last time. That's the last 2 times it's happened in the past 30 years. B. Scott, I believe you were alive for the one other time it's happened, like in our lifetime, which is Rick Mears, I think in '89,
If I was
secured
alive.
his third pole in 4 years. So just outside our time frame. I just wanted to make a shot at you.
I mean,
That's
that
what I
must have
was.
been alive for a couple of them.
Yeah. But the bottom line, even though Dixon sat on the pole 4 times, for the Indy 500, back-to-back poles is a rare feat. Also, Dixon has not started P1 since last Indy 500, so he's not only got a long streak without a win, he's got a long
And
streak without a pole.
if he's
So,
already pulling speeds
but
like
yeah,
he
he's
is now,
second though. Yeah, he was literally second
and
today. I think he was second or
and
third in the test too.
today was pretty warm. It's going to be interesting this weekend. I'll say this now to get it out of the way. Saturday, there's a good chance of rain and storms. So Sunday could get really interesting with trying to get all the qualifying in. And it's going to be a green track. And if you watch the race on Sunday, you saw Townsend Bell describe what a green track is like.
Yeah.
The granola bar.
With the granola bar, which was pretty insane, pretty incredible.
Yeah, but not only is it going to be a green track, but the temperature is supposed to be down in the low to mid 60s for the high that day. So right now it's warmer than it's going to be for qualifying. So speeds are going to be it's going to be a fast track. Let's just put it that way. But it could be a slick track too. Not much rubber down. So it's so hard because Scott Dixon, it's so hard to pick against him when it comes to qualifying for the 500. It is so hard, especially when he's putting up the numbers already. But I'm going to say he does not repeat because there are a lot of drivers today that were just they were out scuffing tires. They were just getting tires prepared for the week, prepared for the weekend, getting their cars loose, getting everything shook out. I mean, you look at like Ed Carpenter and Connor Daly, they were way down the speed charts, but I expect those guys to be up near the top 12 come this weekend. Same thing with a lot of some of the Penske drivers. I expect them to be up higher. Typically, the teams that you see come out straight out of the gates, honestly, this isn't too much of a surprise, I should say. Typically, when we get into practice, the teams that come out hottest right out of the gates are always Andretti and Ganassi. And they just like, oh my gosh, look, they're so consistent. They're so fast. And then out of nowhere, you get some of these other players that step in closer to qualifying. So I can't say for certain. I mean, I think there's a good handful of drivers that could win the pole. But Scott Dixon has a really good chance, but I'm going to say no, just because where conditions could be. Because conditions could be on Sunday, could be a lot more like they were when they came out for the oval test back in April. A little bit cooler, windier, cloudy, not the best conditions, but ability to put up fast speeds. So that's why I'm going to say no, and I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody like Joseph Newgarden.
Yeah, Newgarden was up there for me too. Yeah, it's just one of those things where you feel like you should be picking it, but also like it just doesn't happen as often enough to be like, oh yeah, for sure it's going to happen. So
I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised to see Jimmy Johnson get it.
Yeah, that would be pretty.
I mean, let's be honest. He's running Ganassi power. He's a Ganassi driver, and they come out, like I said, they come out of the gate hot. And they're consistently hot. And this is a guy that knows this track. He's finally somewhere in his element. And look where he was in his element. He did pretty well at Texas, felt comfortable there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see. I mean, I'll at least say this. Jimmy Johnson is going to be in the Fast 12.
Right. Well, let's go ahead and get into it then. Our qualification predictions. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our prediction for highest qualifying rookie, our pole sitter, and then our front row. And we'll do pole sitter and front row at the same time. But as far as highest qualifying rookie, I'm gonna go with Cal Ilott. He's been turning. He's turned two of the best, if not the best, qualifying efforts among rookies this season. Again, writing this question, I totally spaced that there are Indy 500 rookies that are also not rookies for the full-time IndyCar circuit. But I'm just going to stick with Cal Ilott. I think he's going to do a good job. He was 11th at Barber. He was 7th last week at the Indy GP in terms of qualifying. He was 18th during the open test, and I think 16th or 17th today. So he's been about middle of the pack. I think he can get to 12th. He's the fastest among the 2022 rookie class. Jimmy Johnson and Romain Grosjean are Indy 500 rookies, but we're quicker during the open test. But as far as when we're looking at just strictly full rookies as far as the whole series is concerned, I think I'm going to go with Cal Ilott. I think he's going to have a good Saturday and Sunday.
Well, I'm a traditionalist. I'm going Indy 500 rookies. I'm going Jimmy Johnson. I mean, he's proving it right now.
Oh yeah,
that he's going to be up there, and he's going to be a force to contend with this month. So Jimmy Johnson will be the highest qualifying rookie. Jimmy Johnson, I'll go ahead and say it. Jimmy Johnson's going to be the Indy 500 Rookie of the Year.
Oh yeah, I mean it's really shaping up to be that way. I mean, we're
gonna make weird to say right. Jimmy Johnson's going to be the Indy 500 Rookie of the Year. It's like that's not even fair,
right? I mean. The relationship with me and Jimmy Johnson has definitely changed over time. He went from when I first started when I was watching NASCAR and he first came into like the what used to be the Busch series. You have that wreck at Watkins Glen that made me a little bit of a fan of him just because that was just an insane crash, and he jumps up and was jumping on the roof of the car afterwards because everybody thought like, oh man, this is a really bad wreck, he's probably really hurt. And then he goes on to be a driver I'm not a big fan of because all he does is win, no matter what. That's all he does. And then now he's come to IndyCar, and I want him to do well so badly. So yeah, I mean, this could be
maybe if he does well and he wins this thing, that will get a fire burning in the belly of Jeff Gordon, and he'll be like, I'm gonna come race one Indy 500.
I would love that.
That will be the first sellout since the 100th running. I can guarantee it. Guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine? Let's have a Indy 500 where a team forms of Tony Stewart and Jeff Gordon.
Tony Stewart can't fit in an Indy car anymore.
I'm sure if Jeff Gordon was like, "Hey, we're gonna be teammates at the Indy 500," he could work out and do it. If I can start going to the gym again and start slimming down, Tony Stewart can go to the gym again and start slimming down.
If I was Jeff Gordon, I'm pushing Dale Earnhardt Jr. to do it.
Be a good one too.
Especially with his work with NBC. I mean,
going back through which I need to. Have you watched Lost Speedways?
No, I need to. I've got too many shows running at one time, and I need to get some done.
I don't necessarily have too many shows, but I also just bought MLB TV because it was supposed to be at a discounted price, which I didn't get the discount. That's kind of really sad, but I know. So I need to get some usage out of that too. But yeah, I keep seeing Lost Speedways pop up on Peacock, and I'm like, I need to watch that, and I just don't, but I need to. But I was going back through when I was looking at qualifying results from past years. I forgot Kurt Busch ran the Indy. That's
the year wild. Tony Kanaan won.
Yeah,
Kurt Busch almost won it.
yeah. Kurt Busch just ran a couple of them, which is wild. So yeah, I would love to see more of the NASCAR names that I grew up with do well. I mean, even if Jimmy Johnson ends up winning the whole thing, I'll be excited. So let's go ahead and give our front row. For me, the pole sitter is going to be Scott McLaughlin. I know it didn't really show in the practice session today.
Like I said, a lot of the Penske drivers were just shaking the cars out, getting tires scuffed. I'm sure that's what they did. They went out there, ran a couple laps, pulled back in, changed tires, went back out. Same thing.
McLaughlin has been in the top 6 in qualifying 3 of the 5 races this season. Of the 8 drivers who turned at least 170 laps in the open test, McLaughlin was the fastest. He was 5th overall. So I have faith that Scott McLaughlin can start that turnaround for Penske. Here on qualifying weekend. The rest of the front row for me. If I can't pick Scott Dixon to be first, I'll pick him to be second. He's going to be in the inside of row 1. He's started on the front row of 3 of the last 5 Indy 500s. Mentioned earlier that he's got 4 poles to his name. He was 4th quickest in the open test. Dude knows how to get around Indy, and he knows how to get around Indy fast. So I think Scott Dixon will be in the inside of row 1, the middle of row 1. And then Joseph Newgarden rounds out the front row for me. Newgarden was fastest at the open test. He's been in the top 10 in all 5 qualifying sessions this season, so he's been fast all year qualifying. So it's going to be a very Penske-centric front row as far as what I'm predicting.
So my pole sitter, I actually have Joseph Newgarden as the pole sitter. I think he's due.
Yep.
But then he's going to turn. I'm going to make this prediction. He's going to turn around and
gonna pull Scott Sharp. He's gonna wreck in the first. He's gonna wreck in the first turn of the first lap.
So, but I'm going with Joseph Newgarden because that open test and just how similar the conditions are going to be this weekend from that compared to that open test. So I like his chances there. I actually have Rinus VeeKay in the middle of row 1, and then I have my 3rd place car. I'm going with Scott Dixon.
I like it. I like that front row. I like Rinus VeeKay up there too. He was like 5th today, I think, too. So I mean, he's been pretty fast.
He's been a front row guy here recently in the 500. I think last year he was on the front row.
I was like, now you're making me want to look
in the Bitcoin car.
Yes, yeah, I think you're right. Here, let me before we go here, let me look it up. 2021 grid. Yeah, he was 3rd. He was outside row 1. It was Dixon, Herta, and VeeKay in row 1. So there you go.
Herta.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay. All right. That may make me reconsider my.
Everything you've heard for the last hour, just throw it out the window.
Is wrong.
It's wrong.
No. I'm good with what I said. I'm sticking with it. Sticking to my guns. But yes. Joseph Newgarden is going to be the pole winner. Rinus VeeKay going to be right there, and Scott Dixon in 3rd.
I like it. Well, there you have it. That's our qualifying preview. Thank you guys all for watching, tuning in. Remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media. Go follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. If you're on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast app, go over to the YouTube, ring the bell, subscribe. We're almost at 50. Let's go. 3C Media on TikTok as well. Remember, you can watch us live every week on Twitch, twitch.tv/CraigCrash. And remember, you can listen every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course podcast. You can also find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87. If you're going to be out at Pole Day on Sunday, hit me up on Twitter. Drop in my DMs. We'll meet up.
And that's it. I mean, we're getting ready to preview the Indy 500 next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Excited to get into it. We're in the thick of Indy 500 festivities, and like I said, next week will be the Indy 500 preview. But until then, have a good one, everybody.